Hey guys, tonight we're taking a truly chilling journey deep into the shadows of the medieval Middle East, a world of powerful caliphs, secretive sects, and the terrifying whispers of an unseen hand guiding the fate of rulers. We're not focusing on valiant knights or grand empires. Instead, we're pulling back the veil to uncover the disturbing and lonely life of a medieval assassin. Forget the romanticized, acrobatic heroes of fiction. You're about to discover a grim reality where a man's life was defined by forced indoctrination, brutal training, profound psychological manipulation, and an ultimate, terrifying solitude. This wasn't a choice for personal freedom. It was often a life of abduction, coercion, and an irreversible commitment to clandestine murder. Frankly, you probably wouldn't survive the initial calling without longing for a simple, anonymous death. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me, where in the world are you tuning in from, and what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself suddenly standing in a remote, rugged mountain region. Perhaps somewhere in the Alborz Mountains of Persia, modern-day Iran. Around the 11th or 12th century CE, the air is thin and crisp, carrying the scent of rock and sparse vegetation. This is the domain of the Nizari Ismaili state, a secretive and highly influential Shia Muslim sect that wielded power not through conventional armies, but through precision assassinations. And you, a young boy, are about to become one of their most feared and most tragic instruments. Your journey begins not with a personal choice, but with a forced calling. A brutal initiation that will transform you from an innocent child into a cold-blooded killer. The popular legends surrounding the assassins, from the Arabic Hashishin, a controversial term whose etymology is debated, often linking them to hashish use, though many scholars dispute this paint a picture of men drugged into ecstatic obedience. Promised paradise, while the exact methods of recruitment and indoctrination are shrouded in mystery and later hostile accounts. The reality for many was likely far more grim and coercive. You might have been abducted from a young age. Some accounts suggest the Nizari would identify promising young boys from remote villages or vulnerable families, then abduct them, bringing them to their mountain strongholds. Imagine being snatched from your home, your family's cries fading into the night, your childhood abruptly ended by unseen hands, recruited through desperation. Other theories suggest that desperate families, impoverished and without options, might willingly offer their sons to the Nizari, seeing it as the only path to a secure, if brutal, future, and perhaps even some reflected glory or financial aid for the family. Imagine your parents making this agonizing choice, sacrificing your soul for their survival. Indoctrinated from within the sect, if you were born into a Nizari Ismaili family, you would be raised from birth within their highly disciplined and secretive community. Your destiny as a potential fidai, one who sacrifices himself, predetermined by your lineage and the needs of the imam. Regardless of how you arrived, your initial entry into the Nizari stronghold was a profound severance from your past. Your old identity, your family name, your connection to the outside world, all were systematically stripped away. You were immediately immersed in an environment of strict discipline, unwavering religious doctrine, and relentless training. This wasn't a monastery for peaceful contemplation. It was a factory for producing devoted, lethal agents. It truly sucked to have your identity erased by a secretive cult, The motivation behind the Nizari's use of assassination was rooted in their unique political and religious position. As a minority Shia sect, they were constantly surrounded by more powerful Sunni Muslim empires like the Seljuks and later the Ayyubids, who viewed them as heretics, lacking the manpower for conventional warfare. The Nizari opted for a strategy of asymmetrical warfare, assassinating key political and military leaders of their enemies. This created an immense psychological impact, sowing terror and disrupting the command structures of vastly superior foes. The individual assassin, the Fidai, became their most potent weapon, a living embodiment of their unwavering resolve. For you, the conscripted child, this meant your life was now entirely dedicated to this chilling purpose. Your education would be intense and all-consuming. You wouldn't learn the mundane skills of a farmer or a craftsman. Instead, your every moment would be directed towards preparing you for a singular, terrifying task: the silent, surgical elimination of designated targets. Your body, your mind, your very soul would be remade in the image of the perfect killer. The secrecy surrounding your order was paramount. The Nizari operated from isolated, impregnable mountain fortresses like Al-Lamut, known as the Eagle's Nest, accessible only by treacherous paths. This physical isolation reinforced your mental separation from the outside world, immersing you completely in the teachings and the rigid discipline of the order. You would learn to trust only your fellow recruits and your masters, viewing the outside world as a hostile, dangerous place filled with potential enemies. One common misconception is that the assassins, the Nizari, were a chaotic, disorganized band of killers. In reality, the Nizari Ismaili state was a highly structured, sophisticated political and religious organization with a complex hierarchy and a clear ideology. Their use of assassination was a calculated, strategic tool, not random violence. The Fidai were the lowest tier of their hierarchical structure, acting as dedicated agents, while higher ranks like the Dai were highly educated scholars and propagandists. This structured organization made them incredibly effective and resilient, ensuring their influence for centuries. Historians still meticulously study Nizari texts and contemporary accounts, both friendly and hostile, to understand the precise organizational structure, training methods, and ideological motivations of the Nizari state, often finding a far more complex and enduring entity than sensationalized popular history suggests. Furthermore, the act of recruitment itself, whether by abduction or desperate choice, immediately instilled a profound sense of powerlessness. You had no say in your fate. Your future was entirely dictated by the will of the Nizari Imam and his representatives. This initial act of coercion, this loss of self-determination, was the fundamental trauma that underpinned your entire existence as an assassin. You were a weapon to be forged, not a human being with individual desires or rights. The psychological conditioning began early. You would be taught to view your mission, your absolute obedience to the Imam, and your willingness to die as the highest form of piety and the guaranteed path to paradise. This indoctrination, woven with religious fervor and promises of ultimate reward, was designed to eliminate any fear of death, any moral qualms about murder, and any personal hesitation. You were systematically stripped of your humanity, replaced by a programmed devotion to the cause. This chilling transformation was the dark art of the Nizari, turning children into ruthless instruments of terror. So, your initiation into the life of a medieval assassin began not with a personal choice, but with a terrifying, forced calling that ripped you from your former life and plunged you into a world of absolute control, this brutal recruitment, the systematic erasure of your identity, and this early indoctrination into a chilling purpose were the first, and perhaps most foundational. Aspects of the disturbing and lonely life you were about to endure as a clandestine killer for the Nizari Ismaili state, having been forcibly conscripted into the secretive world of the Nizari Ismaili. You, the young recruit, are immediately taken to your new home, a remote, impregnable mountain stronghold, the very heart of the assassin's power. This is the mountain fortress, a place of profound isolation and relentless indoctrination, where your old identity is systematically stripped away, making your journey into a killer's life profoundly disturbing. Imagine the journey to this fortress. It's not a bustling, public road. You would be led along treacherous, winding mountain paths, often blindfolded or disoriented, through desolate landscapes that seemed to swallow sound and light. The fortress itself, like Alamut, the legendary eagle's nest, would be perched high on a precipitous peak, its formidable walls blending seamlessly with the natural rock, accessible only by a single, narrow, heavily guarded trail. The very architecture was designed to inspire awe and terror, a visible manifestation of the Order's power and its impenetrable secrecy. It truly sucked to have your new home be a high-security prison. Once inside the fortress, your world shrinks to its austere confines. You are immediately cut off from any contact with the outside world. No letters, no visitors, no news from your former life. This physical isolation is absolute, designed to completely sever any lingering ties to your past and to immerse you fully in the Nizari's unique ideology. Your new companions are other recruits, equally young and equally terrified, and the stern, unyielding figures of your masters and trainers. The atmosphere within the fortress is one of relentless indoctrination. This isn't just basic education, it's a systematic, sophisticated process of psychological reprogramming, designed to cultivate absolute, unquestioning loyalty to the Imam, the spiritual leader of the Nizari, and to the Order's cause. You would undergo intensive study of Nizari doctrine, which posited the Imam as an infallible, divinely guided leader whose commands were paramount and whose will transcended all earthly laws, religious texts, philosophical treatises, and allegorical interpretations would fill your days, slowly reshaping your worldview. It truly sucked to have your brain systematically rewired. Your old identity is systematically stripped away. Your former name might be replaced. Your memories of your family, your village, your previous life are actively suppressed or reframed within the context of the Order's grand purpose. You are taught that your past was insignificant, that your true purpose lies solely in serving the Imam and the Nizari cause. This relentless psychological conditioning aims to break your individual will and replace it with an absolute, unwavering devotion to the collective. Discipline within the fortress is absolute and often brutal. Your days are meticulously scheduled. From early morning prayers and ideological lessons to physical training and mundane chores, any perceived disobedience, any sign of doubt, or any attempt to challenge the authority of your masters would be met with swift and harsh punishment. This severe discipline, while physically painful, was primarily designed to reinforce obedience and break any lingering rebellious spirit. Ensuring your complete submission to the Order's will, the fortress itself serves as a symbol of your new, confined existence. It is a place of immense strength and security, protecting you from the hostile world outside. But it is also a gilded cage. You are safe from external enemies, but a prisoner within its walls, your movements restricted, your life utterly controlled. The towering battlements The impregnable defenses, they protect you, but they also symbolize your complete lack of freedom, your irreversible commitment to the order. One common misconception is that the Nizari fortresses were just military outposts. In reality, they were sophisticated, self-sufficient communities, encompassing living quarters, training grounds, libraries, workshops, and even extensive agricultural terraces to sustain the population during sieges. Alamut, for instance, had a renowned library and was a center of scientific and philosophical study, not just military training. This self-sufficiency further reinforced the isolation of the inhabitants, creating an entirely self-contained world designed to cut off its members from external influences and loyalties. Historians still meticulously study archaeological remains of Nizari fortresses, like Alamut and Girdku, as well as contemporaneous accounts to understand their architectural features, defensive capabilities, and internal organization, confirming their roles as complex, self-contained communities. Furthermore, the indoctrination often involved a careful cultivation of fear and paranoia regarding the outside world. You would be taught that the Sunni rulers, the Seljuks and others, were tyrannical oppressors, enemies of true Islam, and that they constantly sought to destroy the Nizari. This created an us versus them mentality, reinforcing your loyalty to the order and justifying the extreme measures, including assassination, taken against their foes. This constant narrative of external threat ensured that any lingering desires for the outside world were replaced by a profound sense of shared purpose and collective vigilance. The psychological toll of this profound isolation and relentless indoctrination would be immense. You would live in a world devoid of independent thought, your mind constantly being reshaped by the order's teachings, the loss of your old identity, the severance from your past, and the pervasive atmosphere of discipline would create a deep sense of disorientation and, perhaps, a quiet despair. Your spirit, once free, would be systematically broken, replaced by a programmed devotion that defined your very being. The training methods would often begin to blur the lines between reality and simulation. You might be subjected to scenarios designed to test your loyalty and resolve, perhaps even involving mock assassinations or dangerous physical trials, preparing you mentally and physically for the tasks ahead. This constant state of being tested added another layer of psychological pressure, ensuring you were always on edge, always prepared for the ultimate sacrifice. So, your initiation into the life of a medieval assassin involved a profound and chilling transformation within the mountain fortress. This remote, impregnable stronghold became your world, a place of profound isolation where your old identity was systematically stripped away and replaced by an unwavering devotion to the Imam and his cause. This relentless indoctrination, enforced by strict discipline and pervasive secrecy, was a defining, profoundly disturbing aspect of your brutal journey to become a cold-blooded killer. Having been utterly isolated and systematically indoctrinated within the mountain fortress, you, the young recruit, were then subjected to a relentless and unforgiving regimen of brutal training. Forget conventional military drills. This was a comprehensive, all-consuming process designed to break your body, mind, and spirit, only to meticulously forge them anew into the perfect, lethal instrument of the Nizari Ismaili state. This pervasive, agonizing conditioning made your transformation into an assassin profoundly disturbing. Imagine your daily life within the fortress walls. It began before dawn, often with grueling physical exercises designed to push your body to its absolute limits. You would engage in endless running, scaling treacherous mountain paths, enduring forced marches across rugged terrain, all while carrying increasingly heavy loads. Your lungs would burn, your muscles would ache, and your feet, accustomed to rough, unforgiving ground, would be a mass of calluses and scars. This relentless cardiovascular training was essential for stamina, enabling you to infiltrate compounds silently, escape pursuit, and endure long, arduous journeys to reach your targets. It truly sucked to be perpetually exhausted. Beyond endurance, your physical training focused intensely on martial arts and hand-to-hand combat. You would be taught various forms of unarmed combat, grappling, and disarming techniques, ensuring you could neutralize a target quickly and quietly, even without a weapon. Imagine sparring against your fellow recruits, not in a friendly match, but in a brutal contest where pain was a teacher and mistakes could lead to severe injury. You would learn to deliver precise, debilitating blows, to exploit vulnerabilities, and to use your own body as a weapon. This close-quarters combat training was relentless, often resulting in bruises, sprains, and broken bones, all endured with stoicism, for showing weakness was not tolerated. Your most crucial training revolved around weapon mastery, particularly the dagger, the signature tool of the Fidai. You would spend countless hours practicing with various knives, learning how to conceal them, how to draw them silently, and how to deliver precise, fatal thrusts to vital areas with minimal effort. This wasn't about brute force, it was about surgical precision and lethal efficiency. You would practice on dummies, on straw targets, and perhaps even on live animals, honing your ability to kill swiftly and silently. Imagine the psychological toll of endlessly practicing the act of murder, perfecting the precise angles and motions of taking a life. It truly sucked to have murder be your daily homework. Beyond physical prowess, the training aimed to cultivate absolute mental discipline and emotional control. You were taught to suppress fear, pain, and empathy. Meditation techniques, often combined with intense psychological exercises, were employed to achieve a state of detached focus, allowing you to remain calm under extreme pressure and to execute your missions without hesitation or moral qualms. You would learn to control your breathing, your heart rate, and your physical reactions, becoming a master of self-regulation. This was a profound form of psychological re-engineering, stripping away your natural human responses to violence and fear. Stealth and infiltration were paramount. You would spend hours practicing movement in darkness, learning how to blend into shadows, how to scale walls silently, and how to bypass guards and security measures. You would learn to mimic the gaits and behaviors of various social classes, to observe unnoticed, and to use disguises to infiltrate enemy compounds. This required meticulous attention to detail, endless patience, and an almost supernatural ability to become invisible, making you a master of espionage long before you were a killer. It really sucked to be a human ghost. The ideological indoctrination, which began in the fortress, continued intensely throughout your training. You were constantly reminded of the Imam's divine infallibility, the sacredness of your mission, and the guaranteed path to paradise for those who sacrifice themselves for the cause. This religious fervor was a powerful tool, overriding any lingering doubts or moral objections, transforming your killings into acts of piety and devotion. You were taught that your victims were enemies of the true faith, and your actions were divine justice. One common misconception is that the assassins were merely brutish killers. In reality, the most effective Fidai were often highly intelligent, well-educated in Nizari doctrine and practical skills, and multilingual, capable of blending seamlessly into various societies and infiltrating high-security targets. Their training extended beyond martial arts to include languages, local customs, and the intricate social dynamics of the regions where they would operate. This intellectual training, combined with their physical prowess, made them exceptionally formidable and difficult to detect, highlighting their sophistication as agents. Historians still meticulously study Nizari texts and contemporary accounts to understand the full scope of a fidai's training, often finding evidence of comprehensive preparation that combined physical, intellectual, and psychological elements. Furthermore, the testing of recruits was relentless and often involved extreme, dangerous simulations. You might be subjected to mock ambushes, forced into dangerous infiltration scenarios, or tested for your obedience under extreme duress. These trials were designed to push you beyond your perceived limits, to break any remaining resistance, and to confirm your absolute loyalty and unwavering resolve. Failure in these tests could lead to severe punishment, or even expulsion from the order, condemning you to a life of disgrace or retaliation from external enemies. The psychological toll of this constant training was immense. You lived in a perpetual state of physical discomfort, mental exhaustion, and high alert. Your senses were constantly sharpened, your emotions suppressed, and your personal identity systematically replaced by your role as a devoted fidai. You were a weapon being forged, and the process was agonizing, stripping away your humanity and leaving you a cold, efficient instrument of death. This was not a quick transformation. It was a slow, deliberate, and deeply painful breaking and remaking of your entire being. So, your life as a medieval assassin was fundamentally defined by brutal training that consumed your body, mind, and spirit. From relentless physical conditioning and lethal weapon mastery to intense psychological indoctrination and rigorous stealth exercises, every moment was dedicated to forging you into a perfect, utterly obedient instrument of clandestine murder. This pervasive, agonizing conditioning was a defining, profoundly disturbing aspect of your brutal journey, ensuring that your ultimate purpose was etched into your very being through pain and relentless discipline. Having been utterly remade by the brutal training within the mountain fortress, your transformation into a medieval assassin took its most chilling and perhaps most infamous turn with the elixir. Forget free will. You were subtly, yet profoundly, subjected to the use of mind-altering substances designed to ensure absolute submission and unwavering obedience to the Imam's will, making this aspect of your life profoundly disturbing. Imagine the culmination of a period of intense training and indoctrination. Your masters, the Dai religious instructors and leaders, would select you for a special ritual, often one shrouded in mystery and profound symbolism. You might be led to a secluded chamber, perhaps dimly lit and filled with the scent of incense. And then you would be given a substance. This wasn't merely a sedative or a simple intoxicant. It was believed to be an elixir of paradise, a divine key to unlock visions of the afterlife and cement your absolute devotion to the Imam. It truly sucked to have your beliefs manipulated by drugs, the most widely circulated, though highly debated. Theory is that this elixir was a form of hashish hashish. The term assassin itself is widely believed to be derived from Hashishin Arabic for hashish users, a pejorative term used by their enemies. While modern scholars largely dispute the direct, constant use of hashish to control fidai, as hashish typically induces a lethargic, rather than aggressive, state. The idea of a potent, mind-altering substance used in a ritualized context remains compelling. Hashish, depending on its purity and dosage, could induce altered perceptions, euphoria, vivid dreams, and a detached sense of reality, all of which could be manipulated by skilled indoctrinators. Imagine consuming this substance. You might feel a profound sense of peace, a detachment from your physical self, and a heightened receptivity to suggestions. Your masters, capitalizing on this altered state, might then expose you to carefully orchestrated illusions or sensory experiences. Legends, for instance, spoke of paradise gardens filled with beautiful women, delicious food, and flowing wine, all enjoyed by the drugged assassin, who was then told this was a glimpse of the paradise awaiting him if he faithfully executed the imam's commands. Upon awakening from this drug-induced paradise, the fidai would be utterly convinced of the imam's divine power and the glorious reward awaiting him in the afterlife, solidifying his unwavering obedience and willingness to die. It really sucked to have your heaven be a drug trip. Beyond hashish, other psychoactive substances found in the medieval Middle East could have been used, such as opium, a powerful narcotic that induces euphoria and sedation, or various belladonna alkaloids found in plants like deadly nightshade, mandrake, or henbane, which can cause delirium, hallucinations, and a profound sense of detachment. The precise chemical agents are still a subject of intense academic debate, as direct historical evidence is scarce and biased. However, the consistent element across accounts is the use of something to profoundly alter the assassin's state of consciousness, making them more pliable, more obedient, and utterly fearless of death. The purpose of this elixir was absolute control and submission. By blurring the lines between reality and illusion, by seemingly providing a taste of paradise on earth, the Nizari masters sought to eliminate any lingering fear of death or moral qualms about murder. The Fidai would believe that by dying in the Imam's service, they would immediately return to this promised paradise, making them utterly fearless and fanatically devoted. This psychological manipulation, using chemical means, was a terrifyingly effective method of turning human beings into obedient, disposable weapons. It really sucked to have your ultimate reward be a psychological trick. This deliberate manipulation of consciousness also contributed to the profound dehumanization of the assassin. Their personal will, their independent judgment, their very sense of self were systematically eroded by a combination of brutal training, relentless indoctrination, and chemical interference. They became instruments, guided by an external will, their actions no longer truly their own. This loss of personal agency was a silent, insidious horror, turning them into highly effective, yet deeply tragic figures. One common misconception is that the assassins were simply common drug addicts constantly high on hashish. This portrayal, largely originating from hostile medieval European accounts like Marco Polo's often sensationalized descriptions, which drew heavily on local legends and rumors, is now widely disputed by modern historians. Most scholars believe that if psychoactive substances were used, it would have been in a ritualized, controlled manner, primarily for indoctrination or specific missions, rather than chronic use, which would make assassins unreliable and lethargic. The Nizari were too organized and effective for their agents to be perpetually drugged. Historians still meticulously study Nizari texts and a wide range of medieval primary sources to understand the actual nature of their training and ideological control, often highlighting the sophistication of their religious and political motivation over simplistic drug use theories. Furthermore, the very secrecy surrounding the elixir and the paradise visions meant that the Fidai themselves would likely have no clear memory of what transpired during their altered states, or only fragmented. Highly vivid impressions that reinforced the intended message. This psychological amnesia combined with the profound impact of the experience further cemented the manipulation, leaving them utterly convinced of the imam's divine power without any rational means to question it. The long-term effects of repeated exposure to such potent mind-altering substances, even if infrequent, would likely have been detrimental to the assassin's health, while specific medical knowledge from that era is limited. Modern understanding of hallucinogens and narcotics suggests potential for neurological damage, psychological instability, and physical health issues, further contributing to the overall misery of their existence. Their body and mind were tools used and discarded in service of a greater cause. So, your transformation into a medieval assassin was chillingly completed by the use of the elixir, a mind-altering substance designed to break your will and cement your absolute obedience. This profound psychological manipulation, exploiting your deepest desires for paradise and your innate fear of death, was a defining, profoundly disturbing aspect of your brutal journey, ensuring that your life became an instrument of clandestine murder, utterly devoid of true autonomy. Having been forged by brutal training and psychologically manipulated by the elixir, you, the medieval assassin Fidai, were now ready for your terrifying purpose, the mission itself. Forget chaotic battlefield skirmishes. Your operations were meticulously planned infiltrations and silent surgical eliminations executed with chilling precision, making every assignment a profoundly disturbing test of your skill, nerve, and obedience. Imagine the briefing for your target, your masters, the da'i, religious leaders, and strategists of the Nizari would meticulously explain your objective. This wasn't a random act of violence, it was a highly calculated political or strategic assassination. Your target would be a prominent figure, a powerful caliph, a vizier, a general, a rival religious leader, or a crusader lord. You would be given every known detail about your victim, their daily routines, their security arrangements, their habits, their weaknesses. This was not a blind mission. It was a psychological profile designed to give you every possible advantage. It truly sucked to stalk your prey. Your preparation would be extensive, focusing on infiltration and disguise. Unlike a soldier who fought openly, your strength lay in anonymity and stealth. You might spend weeks, months, or even years studying your target's environment. You would learn the local language, adopt regional customs, and meticulously craft a convincing disguise. You might pose as a merchant, a scholar, a servant, a Sufi mystic, or even a humble gardener, slowly infiltrating your target's inner circle or gaining access to their fortified compound. Imagine the immense psychological burden of living a double life, constantly acting, constantly vigilant, knowing that one wrong word or one false move could expose you and lead to a brutal death. It really sucked to be a human lie. Your weapon of choice would almost always be a dagger, the signature tool of the Fidai. This wasn't a sword for open combat. It was a short, sharp, easily concealable blade, designed for swift, silent, and intimate killing. You would practice endlessly, perfecting the precise thrust to vital areas like the throat or heart to ensure immediate death with minimal struggle. The goal was to eliminate the target quickly, often in public, to maximize the psychological impact and terrorize their followers, but also to facilitate your own escape. The execution of the mission would be a moment of chilling calm amidst the chaos you intended to create. You would wait patiently, sometimes for hours, for the perfect opportunity, a moment when your target was vulnerable, perhaps in a crowded marketplace, during a religious procession, in a palace courtyard, or even in their private chambers. You would move swiftly, silently, delivering the fatal blow with surgical precision. The act itself would be intimate, visceral, and horrifyingly direct. Imagine feeling the blade sink into flesh, the sudden warmth of blood, and the final gasp of your victim. This profound act of murder, however justified by your indoctrination, would be a defining, soul-chilling moment. It really sucked to kill so quietly. The target was often killed in public. To maximize the psychological impact on the enemy, the Nizari understood that a highly visible assassination of a powerful leader, seemingly out of nowhere, would sow immense terror and paranoia among their foes, creating a fear that no one was safe, no matter their guards or fortifications. This was asymmetrical warfare at its most effective, using a single life yours, potentially to destabilize an entire regime. The aftermath of the kill was also meticulously planned. Sometimes, you might attempt to escape, using your stealth and knowledge of the terrain. Other times, the mission was a suicide mission, where you were expected to die at the scene, either by fighting to the death against guards or by committing suicide, ensuring you could not be captured and interrogated. This ultimate act of self-sacrifice, fueled by your indoctrination and the promise of paradise, was the terrifying culmination of your unwavering devotion. One common misconception is that all assassin missions were suicide missions. While many fidai died during or immediately after their operations, often intentionally, or due to being overwhelmed by guards, not every mission was designed for the assassin to die. Escape and a return to the fortress were also objectives, particularly for more valuable agents who had undergone extensive training. The decision to fight to the death or attempt escape depended on the specific strategic goals of the mission and the resources available. Historians still meticulously study various accounts of Nizari assassinations, analyzing the tactical objectives and the fate of the fidai to understand the varying levels of self-sacrifice expected, often finding a pragmatic balance between desired impact and preservation of skilled agents. Furthermore, the moral and psychological burden of carrying out such targeted murders, often without direct personal animosity towards the victim, would be immense. You were systematically stripped of empathy, taught to view your targets as enemies of the Imam, but the inherent act of taking a life, especially in cold blood, leaves indelible marks on the human psyche. The detachment required for such precision killing would itself be a profound form of self-mutilation. The very act of knowing you were destined for such a mission, that your life's purpose was to commit murder, would create a chilling internal reality. You would live with the constant awareness of your impending lethal task, the meticulous planning, and the terrifying moment of execution, this pervasive sense of destiny, this grim purpose, would shape your every thought and action, leaving little room for any other form of personal fulfillment. So, your life as a medieval assassin was profoundly disturbing due to the very nature of the mission itself, from meticulous infiltration and disguise to the chillingly precise executions of your target with a dagger. Every assignment was a terrifying test of your skill, nerve, and absolute obedience. This brutal, calculated act of clandestine murder, often performed in public for maximum terror, was a defining, profoundly miserable aspect of your existence, ensuring that your life's purpose was etched in the blood of your victims. Even if you, the fidai, successfully carried out your chilling mission, leaving your target lifeless, your ordeal was far from over. The moments immediately following the kill were fraught with intense peril, ushering you into a brutal reality of escape, surveillance, and potential betrayal. Forget a clean getaway or a hero's welcome. Your life was now a desperate flight for survival, making your existence profoundly disturbing. Imagine the immediate aftermath of delivering the fatal blow. The sudden chaos, the screams of discovery, the shouts of guards, the panicked cries of the crowd would erupt around you. Your training would kick in, an instinctual surge of adrenaline. Your primary objective, if the mission wasn't explicitly suicidal, was now to escape. This wasn't about leisurely strolls. It was a desperate, high-stakes dash for survival, often through hostile territory. Pursued by enraged guards and vengeful retinues, it truly sucked to be on the run for your life. Your escape might involve navigating a labyrinthine palace, scaling walls, or blending seamlessly into a panicked crowd. You would use the stealth and infiltration skills honed during your brutal training, moving like a phantom, exploiting every shadow and every moment of confusion. But the pursuit would be relentless. The target's guards would be highly motivated to capture or kill you, eager for revenge or to prevent you from escaping with valuable intelligence. Every alleyway, every rooftop, every busy street became a potential trap, turning your supposed escape into a terrifying, continuous chase. If you managed to flee the immediate vicinity, your life became one of constant surveillance and extreme paranoia. The Nizari, being a secretive order, often had networks of spies and sympathizers in various cities, but you could never be entirely sure whom to trust. Every stranger's glance, every whispered conversation, every unusual movement in the shadows could be a sign of pursuit. You would live in perpetual fear of detection, knowing that the authorities, once alerted, would spare no effort to track down the assassin who dared to strike at their leaders. This relentless, invisible watchfulness would erode your sense of security, making true rest or peace of mind impossible. It really sucked to be paranoid all the time. The threat of betrayal was omnipresent. Fellow assassins, if captured and tortured, might reveal information about you or your escape route. Disgruntled members of the Nizari Order, or those with shifting loyalties, could provide intelligence to your pursuers in exchange for clemency or reward. The very secrecy that protected your order also bred a climate of suspicion, where trust was a dangerous luxury. Imagine realizing that the only people who truly knew your identity, your fellow agents, could also be the ones to condemn you. It really sucked to be betrayed by your own kind. Your only hope was to reach a designated safe house or return to one of the Nizari strongholds. The journey back would be arduous, requiring you to travel disguised, often alone, through unfamiliar and hostile territories, constantly aware of the bounties that might be placed on your head. You might have to rely on crude maps, whispered instructions, and your own cunning to navigate through lands where every local authority, every passing patrol, every suspicious glance was a potential threat. The physical toll of constant flight would be immense. You would suffer from exhaustion, hunger, thirst, and the inevitable injuries from falls or minor skirmishes. Sleep would be fitful, plagued by nightmares and the need for constant vigilance. Your body, already pushed to its limits by your training, would now be subjected to the additional strain of relentless pursuit, further deteriorating your health and resilience. It really sucked to literally run yourself to death. One common misconception is that all medieval assassins were suicidal and died at the scene of the crime, while many fidai were indeed willing martyrs, and some missions were designed for self-sacrifice. Successful escapes were also a tactical objective for the Nizari. Retaining skilled agents was valuable, and a successful escape could add to the mystique and terror of the order. suggesting their agents were almost supernatural in their abilities. However, the subsequent pursuit and the dangers of the return journey meant that a successful escape was still fraught with extreme peril, and many likely perished en route to safety. Historians still meticulously study various accounts of Nizari assassinations, comparing those where the Fidai died on scene versus those who attempted escape, to understand the tactical and ideological nuances of their missions. Furthermore, even if you successfully returned to a Nizari stronghold, your life would not necessarily be one of peace. You might face rigorous interrogation to ensure your loyalty hadn't been compromised, or to debrief you on the mission's details. You might be sent on another mission quickly, or simply resume your training, never truly finding rest from the relentless demands of your life as an assassin. Your home was a place of further control and perpetual readiness. The psychological toll of constant flight and the lingering fear of capture and torture would be profound. You would live with a perpetual sense of paranoia, unable to truly relax or trust others. The knowledge that you were a marked man, an enemy of powerful empires, would weigh heavily on your spirit, fostering a deep sense of isolation even when surrounded by your comrades. Your life was an endless loop of danger and escape, with no true sanctuary. The sheer brutality of the consequences for capture was also a constant shadow. If you were caught, you would face excruciating torture to extract information about the Nizari's strongholds, their plans, and their methods. Your agonizing pain would be used as a tool to break the silence of the Order, making the prospect of capture a fate worse than death. The authorities would show no mercy, eager to make an example of a captured assassin, using your suffering as a public deterrent against the Nizari's influence. So, your life as a medieval assassin was profoundly disturbing due to the horrifying reality of the aftermath of a kill, the desperate flight for survival, the constant surveillance by relentless pursuers, the omnipresent threat of betrayal, and the brutal consequences of capture ensured that your life was a perpetual cycle of danger and evasion. This relentless pursuit and profound insecurity made every moment after a mission a terrifying, lonely struggle for mere existence, a continuous ordeal until your ultimate inevitable end. Even as you, the Fidai, navigated the desperate aftermath of a kill and lived under the shadow of relentless pursuit, a deeper, more insidious misery would inevitably consume you. Profound loneliness. Forget human connection, trust, or the warmth of a loving family. Your life as a medieval assassin was defined by ultimate isolation, a chilling reality that made your existence profoundly disturbing. Imagine your world. You are part of a secretive order, living in a remote mountain fortress. Your training has systematically stripped away your old identity, your emotional attachments, and your natural human responses. You are taught to be detached, to suppress empathy, and to view the outside world as a hostile place. This deliberate dehumanization, while making you an effective killer, simultaneously severed you from the very bonds that define human experience. You were a weapon, but a weapon that could not truly connect. It truly sucked to be a human ghost. Your closest companions would be other recruits or fellow Fidai, while you shared a common, brutal existence and a fanatical loyalty to the Imam. True intimacy was almost impossible. The pervasive atmosphere of secrecy and suspicion meant you could never fully trust anyone, not even your comrades. Any weakness, any wavering loyalty, any personal doubt could be reported to your masters, leading to severe punishment or even death. This constant need for vigilance, even among those supposedly on your side. bred a profound paranoia that poisoned any potential for genuine friendship. Imagine trying to form a bond when everyone is potentially a spy. It really sucked to be surrounded by comrades, but utterly alone. The nature of your missions exacerbated this loneliness. You operated alone, or in small, isolated cells, far from the support of a larger community. You lived in disguise, adopting false identities, constantly acting a part. This perpetual deception meant you could never truly reveal your true self to anyone in the outside world, never form genuine connections with the people you lived amongst. Your public persona was a lie, and your private self was a tormented, isolated being. This double life created an immense psychological burden, leading to a profound sense of alienation. You were also cut off from any prospect of a normal family life, marriage, raising children, establishing a lineage. These fundamental human aspirations were utterly denied to you. Your body was dedicated to the Imam's service, not to procreation. Your life was too precarious, too secretive, to allow for the stability and intimacy of a family. Imagine the quiet despair of knowing you would never experience the simple joys of a loving spouse or the laughter of your own children. Your genetic and emotional legacy systematically terminated by your calling. It really sucked to have your future erased. The psychological toll of this profound loneliness was immense. You would grapple with crushing solitude, despair, and a pervasive sense of emptiness. The memories of your past life, your family, your childhood, would slowly fade or become distorted, leaving you rootless and disconnected. The constant pressure to suppress your emotions, to remain stoic and detached, would lead to a profound emotional numbness, a chilling internal silence that mirrored your external isolation. This was a mental anguish that no amount of physical training or religious indoctrination could truly erase. One common misconception is that all medieval assassins were solitary, reclusive figures. While the Fida'i certainly operated with a high degree of stealth and isolation during missions, the Nizari Ismaili state itself was a highly organized religious and political community. Within their mountain strongholds, there was communal living, shared meals, and intensive intellectual and religious discourse. However, even within this community, the emphasis on absolute loyalty, secrecy, and the potential for any member to be a sacrificer meant that genuine, unconditional trust and intimate human connection, as we understand it, were incredibly rare, especially for the Fida'i. Historians still meticulously study Nizari texts and intelligence reports to understand the internal social dynamics and the varying degrees of personal freedom and connection allowed to different tiers of their organization. Furthermore, the very ideology of the Nizari reinforced this isolation. You were taught that only the true believers, those within the inner circle of the Imam's followers, truly mattered. The outside world was seen as an enemy or as spiritually misguided, further justifying your detachment and reducing any potential for empathy with those you might be tasked to eliminate. This ideological separation cemented your loneliness, turning your spiritual devotion into a barrier against universal human connection. Even if you completed multiple missions and returned to the fortress, there was no true retirement or reintegration into a normal life. You were an assassin for life, forever marked by your deeds and your unique status, your knowledge of secrets, your capacity for violence, and your profound emotional detachment meant you could never truly be normal again. You would live out your days in perpetual readiness, your existence a testament to the chilling trade-off between loyalty to the order and the profound loneliness of a life devoid of genuine human bonds. So, Your life as a medieval assassin was profoundly disturbing due to your profound loneliness, systematically stripped of your identity, severed from family, unable to form genuine connections due to secrecy and paranoia, and living a life of perpetual deception. You existed in a chilling void, this ultimate isolation. A profound lack of human warmth and trust was a defining, soul-crushing aspect of your brutal journey, ensuring that your life as a clandestine killer was a testament to enduring solitude, even as you, the Fidai, endured the profound loneliness and terrifying solitude of your existence. Your life as a medieval assassin was perpetually haunted by an even deeper, more insidious torment, psychological decay. Forget peace of mind or emotional stability. A life dedicated to clandestine murder, marked by constant paranoia, suppressed empathy, and the chilling weight of your deeds, led to profound internal suffering that made your life profoundly disturbing. Imagine the internal landscape of your mind. You were trained to be emotionless, to suppress fear and empathy, to view your targets as mere obstacles or enemies of the Imam. But the act of taking a human life, repeatedly and in cold blood, leaves indelible marks on the human psyche. You might experience flashbacks of your kills, the final gasp of your victims, or the sickening sensation of your dagger entering flesh, replaying these horrors in vivid, terrifying detail, even in your moments of supposed rest. Sleep would be fitful, plagued by nightmares that blurred the lines between reality and the brutal acts you had committed. It truly sucked to have your brain become your own torture chamber. Guilt and moral ambiguity would be a constant, gnawing presence. Even if your indoctrination tried to suppress it, while you were taught that your victims were enemies of the true faith and that your actions guaranteed you a place in paradise. The fundamental act of murder, often without direct personal animosity, would inevitably weigh on your conscience. This internal conflict, this battle between programmed devotion and a lingering sense of humanity, would create profound psychological distress. You might question your past actions, your purpose, or the very nature of the paradise you were promised, leading to existential despair. Paranoia would become a way of life. Having lived in a world of spies, betrayal, and constant surveillance as explored in Chapter 6, you would be perpetually on edge. Every whispered conversation, every unfamiliar face, every subtle glance would be scrutinized for signs of threat or betrayal. You would never truly trust anyone, not even your fellow Fidai or your masters, knowing that their loyalty was to the order, not necessarily to you as an individual. This constant state of heightened alert, this inability to relax or confide in anyone, would lead to chronic stress, anxiety, and potentially a descent into full-blown paranoid psychosis. Imagine living every moment convinced that someone was watching you, waiting to strike. It really sucked to be your own worst enemy. The systematic suppression of emotion during your training, while making you an effective killer, would also lead to a profound emotional numbness. You might find yourself unable to experience joy, love, or genuine connection. Your emotional spectrum would shrink, leaving you feeling hollow and detached from the world around you. This spiritual and emotional void would contribute to a deep sense of despair and apathy, reducing you to a functional automaton, capable of carrying out commands but stripped of true human vitality. This psychological decay could manifest in various ways. Insomnia, plagued by nightmares and paranoia. You would struggle to find restful sleep, leading to chronic fatigue that compounded your mental anguish. Depression. The cumulative weight of guilt, isolation, and hopelessness could lead to profound, debilitating depression, robbing you of motivation and the will to live. Substance abuse. Some assassins might turn to the very substances like hashish or opium, if used in their order, that were part of their indoctrination, or to alcohol, seeking to numb the pain of their internal suffering, leading to addiction and further physical and mental deterioration. It really sucked to try and numb your soul. Violence outside missions, the ingrained aggression and desensitization to violence might spill over into daily life, leading to outbursts of uncontrollable rage or violence against fellow recruits or even innocents, further isolating you and perhaps leading to punishment by your own order. One common misconception is that ancient people lacked the psychological complexity to suffer from conditions like PTSD or severe depression. While they didn't have modern diagnostic terms, historical accounts from various cultures describe individuals suffering from profound melancholy, madness, and spiritual despair after experiencing trauma or engaging in morally challenging acts, indicating that the human mind has always been susceptible to such burdens. The specific methods of the Nizari, designed to break the will, would almost certainly lead to severe psychological consequences for their fidai. Historians still meticulously study ancient medical texts, philosophical treatises, and personal narratives when available for clues about psychological suffering in the medieval Middle East, often finding evidence of profound emotional and mental distress. Furthermore, the very concept of unquestioning obedience to a divine leader, while theoretically offering spiritual comfort, could also create a terrifying moral void if the imam commanded an act that conflicted with any lingering personal moral compass. The resulting cognitive dissonance could be immense, leading to profound psychological fragmentation and internal turmoil. You were forced to reconcile your own inherent morality with absolute, externally imposed commands. A battle you were destined to lose, leaving your conscience scarred. So, your life as a medieval assassin was profoundly disturbing due to the relentless psychological decay it inflicted upon you. The constant trauma of clandestine murder, the pervasive paranoia, the systematic suppression of empathy, and the gnawing burden of guilt led to a life of profound internal suffering, leaving you haunted by your deeds and forever isolated within the confines of your own tormented mind. This ultimate psychological toll was a defining, profoundly miserable aspect of your existence, ensuring that even if your body survived, your soul was irrevocably broken. Even as your shattered psyche grappled with the profound loneliness and psychological decay of your life as a medieval assassin, the shadow of failure hung perpetually over you. For in Fidai, a botched mission or a captured agent meant a horrifying, agonizing end, often far worse than a quick death in combat. This ever-present price of failure, culminating in brutal torture and annihilation, made your existence profoundly disturbing. Imagine the terror of a failed mission. Perhaps your target was more heavily guarded than anticipated. Your disguise was compromised, or you made a single, fatal mistake in your meticulously planned infiltration. The alarm would sound, the guards would close in, and your desperate flight for survival would begin. But unlike a soldier who might surrender and hope for capture, your fate as an assassin, if taken alive, was far grimmer. You knew, intimately, the brutal consequences of falling into enemy hands. It truly sucked to have failure mean more than just dying. If captured, you would be subjected to excruciating torture. Your enemies, desperate to uncover the secrets of the Nizari Ismaili, the identities of their leaders, the locations of their fortresses, their future targets. Their methods of infiltration would spare no effort to break your will. Imagine being subjected to medieval torture devices, the rack, the strappado, thumbscrews, or simply prolonged beatings and starvation. Your body, already hardened by brutal training, would be pushed beyond its limits, screaming in agony, every nerve screaming for release. The pain would be designed not just to punish, but to extract information, to break your mind as well as your body. Your training had taught you to suppress pain, but sustained. Relentless torture was a different kind of hell. It really sucked to have your body be a tool for extracting secrets. The goal of your captors was simple: to make you confess and betray your order. They would demand information about Alamut, about the Imam, about your fellow Fidai. They would promise clemency, wealth, or a quick death if you complied. And the methods of torture were designed to make even the most fanatically loyal assassin break. The psychological torment of battling your own physical agony, struggling to maintain your secrecy, knowing that every word could condemn your comrades and compromise your sacred cause, would be immense. Many likely broke, or simply died under the torment, their secrets taken with them to the grave, or perhaps agonizingly revealed in their final throes. Even if you managed to resist revealing vital information, your end would be a public spectacle of annihilation and ignominy for an assassin. A captured Fidai was a trophy, a powerful symbol of imperial victory over the shadowy Nizari threat. You would likely be subjected to a public execution, designed for maximum terror and to serve as a gruesome warning to others. Imagine being paraded through the streets, mutilated by torture, before a jeering, terrified crowd. Your execution might be prolonged and agonizing, perhaps by impalement, burning alive, or being thrown to wild beasts, a deliberate desecration of your body and your memory. This wasn't just death, it was an attempt to erase your very being. To demonstrate the futility of defying the state, it really sucked to be a human warning sign. This brutal public end was a direct counterpoint to the Nizari's own strategy of precision. Often public assassination, just as the Fidai used terror to destabilize their enemies. The empires used brutal public executions to terrorize the Nizari and their sympathizers. Your life, lived in the shadows, would end in a brutal glare of public condemnation. Your sacrifice a grim testament to imperial power. One common misconception is that all captured assassins immediately committed suicide or died silently, while their training certainly instilled immense loyalty and a strong will to resist interrogation. Human endurance has limits. Historical accounts, often biased, sometimes describe captured Fidai breaking under torture or uttering defiant statements before their execution. The ultimate fate varied, but the common thread was a brutal end designed for maximum deterrent effect. Historians still meticulously study medieval texts and trial records when available to understand the precise methods of interrogation, torture, and execution used against captured Nizari agents, often finding evidence of immense cruelty and a determined effort to extract information and break the order's mystique. Furthermore, the very act of a Fidai being captured and subjected to torture or execution carried immense implications for the Nizari order itself. It meant a compromise of their secrecy, a potential leak of vital intelligence, and a blow to their reputation for being elusive and unstoppable. The capture of an assassin, therefore, wasn't just your personal tragedy, it was a strategic setback for the entire Nizari state, forcing them to reevaluate their security and methods. The psychological toll on you, the captured assassin, would be immense. The knowledge that your failure jeopardized your order, the agony of torture, and the terror of your impending. Brutal, public death would combine to create a profound, all-consuming despair. You were not just dying. You were witnessing your own systematic destruction. Your body, a canvas for your captor's vengeance. Your spirit broken by the ultimate price of failure. So, your life as a medieval assassin was ultimately defined by the terrifying price of failure. A botched mission meant not just death, but brutal torture to extract secrets, followed by a public, agonizing annihilation designed to terrorize. This horrifying culmination of your dangerous existence was a defining, profoundly disturbing aspect of your brutal journey, ensuring that your life ended not in paradise, but in excruciating pain, public disgrace, and a permanent, grim warning etched into history. You've endured the forced calling into a secretive order, suffered brutal training that remade your body and mind, been psychologically manipulated by a potent elixir, executed chillingly precise missions, survived desperate escapes, withered under profound loneliness, and grappled with the insidious decay of your own psyche, always overshadowed by the terrifying price of failure as the whispers of the mountain fortress fade and the imagined scent of blood dissipates. A final, chilling truth settles upon you. The life of a medieval assassin was not one of glory or true power, but a shadowy existence defined by anonymity, pervasive fear, and ultimate annihilation. A profoundly disturbing and lonely legacy. Consider the absolute dehumanization that defined every moment of your existence. From the moment of your abduction or coerced recruitment, you ceased to be an individual. You became an instrument, a weapon to be forged. Owned by the Nizari Ismaili state, your personal identity was systematically stripped away, your emotions suppressed, and your will subjugated to the absolute authority of the Imam. Your life was not your own. It was entirely dedicated to a single, chilling purpose, clandestine murder. This profound stripping of humanity was the bedrock of your misery, ensuring your existence held no intrinsic value beyond your capacity for lethal service. It truly sucked to be a human knife. Then there's the unrelenting psychological torment. Your mind, once free, was remade through brutal indoctrination and chemical manipulation, transforming you into a loyal, fearless killer. But this came at a devastating cost. You lived with constant paranoia, unable to trust anyone, perpetually vigilant for threats from both enemies and potential betrayers within your own order. The act of taking human life, repeatedly and in cold blood, left indelible scars, manifesting as nightmares, guilt, and profound psychological decay. Your internal world became a battleground, as testament to the horrors you witnessed and inflicted, leaving you forever haunted. And what about the profound, pervasive loneliness cut off from your family, banned from normal human relationships, and living a life of constant disguise and secrecy? You existed in a chilling void. You were surrounded by comrades, yet utterly isolated by the pervasive suspicion and the nature of your trade. There was no true emotional intimacy, no genuine connection, no personal legacy of family or children. Your existence was a solitary one, your successes celebrated only by your unseen masters, your suffering endured in silence. This ultimate isolation was perhaps the deepest wound, leaving you emotionally numb and spiritually adrift. Finally, the grim reality of your end and legacy. For an assassin, retirement was rarely peaceful. You faced a high probability of death during a mission, or in a desperate escape attempt if captured. You endured agonizing torture designed to extract secrets, followed by a brutal, public execution designed to deter others. Your body would be desecrated, your name vilified, your sacrifice reduced to a mere cautionary tale in the annals of your enemies. Even if you survived a long career, your psychological scars and your ultimate anonymity in history meant your legacy was one of profound absence. You were a shadow. And in death, you simply faded away. It truly sucked to be erased by history. The very mystery surrounding the assassins today, while fascinating, also underscores this brutal anonymity. Much of what we know comes from hostile accounts designed to demonize them, or from limited internal Nizari texts. The precise details of their training, their internal lives, and their ultimate fates are often lost to history, contributing to the enduring mystique, but also to the profound sense of their erased humanity. They became a terrifying concept. Rather than remembered individuals, one common misconception is that the assassins were a cult of mindless fanatics, purely driven by drug use, while the elixir may have played a role in indoctrination. Modern scholarship largely points to their deep ideological commitment to Nizari Ismaili doctrine and their unwavering loyalty to the Imam as the primary drivers of their obedience and effectiveness. They were highly intelligent, disciplined, and motivated agents operating within a sophisticated political and religious framework. Not simply drugged puppets. This intellectual and spiritual foundation, however, made their choice to live and die by the blade all the more chilling and deliberate. Historians still meticulously study Nizari texts and contemporary accounts to understand the precise balance between faith, indoctrination, and pragmatic strategy in their operations. Ultimately, the story of the disturbing and lonely life of a medieval assassin is a chilling narrative of extreme human manipulation and the profound cost of wielding power through terror. It reveals a life meticulously engineered for clandestine murder, consuming the body, shattering the mind, and isolating the spirit. For all their legendary reputation, the assassins were profoundly tragic figures, their existence a testament to brutality, ultimate solitude, and a grim, shadowy legacy woven into the fabric of medieval history. As you now drift into a deep, comforting sleep, let the whispers of ancient plots and the phantom chill of a dagger's edge finally subside. You are safe, in your own time, far removed from the brutal realities of a medieval assassin's existence. May your dreams be peaceful, filled with the quiet certainty of your own autonomy, and the profound comfort of genuine human connection, a stark contrast to the disturbing and lonely truth we've explored tonight. And now, good night, and have sweet dreams.